there. My name is Dr. Kimberly Ernest. I'm a licensed psychologist, licensed professional counselor, the president of Pennsylvania Counseling Services, founder of Live Up Counseling. I am also a therapist who has conducted psychotherapy as a provider for about 20 years. But even longer than that, I've been in my own therapy on and off from adolescence. Today, we are going to talk about the role of the therapeutic relationship and the role of the provider on the other side of the couch. So specifically today, we're going to be talking about what it's like to be a client in our own therapy. And I will lead with a spoiler. I think all the best therapists do their own therapy. So if you are a provider currently on the fence about whether or not you wish to initiate your own services, hopefully today we push you over the edge in a good way.
Hi, my name is Ashley Beaver. I work with PCS and I've had experiences with my own family-based therapy. I'm a family-based worker, and it definitely has held impacts on how I conduct myself today.
Thank you.
I'm Shailene Mendez-Asena. I'm a family-based therapist at PCS, and I actually, in my younger days, I was the ambivalent client in family-based.
Excellent.
Thanks. I'm Cece Hines. I'm also a family-based therapist here at PCS, and I have been in a lot of different therapies since I was like 18, done individual, couples, and group therapy. So I have a lot that I could share.
Well, my name is Ben. I'm an outpatient therapist with Pennsylvania Counseling. I do a mix of mental health and drug and alcohol work, and I have been in my own therapy for the better part of 2 years.
Nice. Well, thank you. So I want to start out with this misconception, or maybe it's a valid stereotype. I don't know. What about this notion that therapists don't make good therapy clients? I'm a pretty firm believer that the very best therapists go to their own therapy, either before, during, or after their therapeutic journey. And yet we often hear that therapists aren't the best clients. I know there have been times where I've been nervous providing psychotherapy to therapists. Is there validity to this statement? Can a therapist be a good client, or what kind of safeguards can we put in place to get the most out of our own treatment when we as helpers seek support?
Honestly, I think that we can be good clients. I think at that point, it falls back on the joining stage because we already see it. We know the model. We see the model. We're already thinking about the model, and we don't even realize that we're thinking about the model. So it really falls back on the joining phase. If I can join with you, I won't see you as competition. I won't see you as another therapist who's in the therapy game with me. I see you as a friend. I can let my walls down.
So you can allow influence if there is that connection.
Yeah. I'm not critiquing you. I'm not looking at you as a mentor. You're not higher than me. I'm not higher than you. We're on the same playing field because we've joined. We've gotten there.
I don't know. I just really want to ask my therapist, does she like me? Do you even like me? Also, side note, whenever I meet with her on Zoom, I have this secret competition with her where I try to log off before she does, and she always logs off before me. So now I'm like, oh, is this because you hate me? Am I the problem? I just want to know.
Well, it's funny you say it because my therapist, when we're on a telehealth session, they don't log off. They literally get up out of their chair and walk out of the room. And I'm like, so I could just sit there. And I've thought about it, be like, what would happen if I just sat here and waited for a second? But
does that make you a difficult client?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. I think it really probably depends. I feel like maybe therapists are the worst clients before they're actually in the room because, at least I know for me, I waited probably way longer than I should have to get into therapy, and it was that kind of waiting and oh, I don't really need it. I already know what they're going to say. I know the code. I just got to do it, right? And that, I think, was maybe the bad client part of me beforehand.
Yeah, that's a good point, too, because, I did it when I was still in college. And even though I was a psychology major and I was learning about the terms like depression, anxiety, all of these things, like when I was in the therapy chair, like as a client, my therapist was like, I think you might be depressed. I was like, no, because I just read that in my textbook and like that, me and her were not the same.
No.
Like I don't know her. And so like having like sitting, the longer I sat there, the more I'm like, yeah, I think I am depressed. And she's like, really? So I think like, and then when you say like before you were like the ambivalent client, like it can be easy to be the ambivalent client on both ends because like you have your own expectations from your model of what therapy looks like. And then when you get into it and if it's not the same or if it's a very different expectation, you adjust. And sometimes that adjustment isn't always like, it doesn't always flow the way that you would expect it to, I guess.
I think that's why I like leave it up to the joining phase because in the joining phase, that's when you build trust. And in that moment, like you just shared, you had more trust in what you knew, which was the textbook, than her. So it makes sense.
Well, and kind of going off the joining phase thing there too, like I think there's a huge part of it where, like, I think I vastly underestimated the therapeutic relationship before being in my own therapy because, like, once I actually like it, I've had 2 different therapists over the last 2 years, and the second one I feel like had a lot of work to do because there was some damage from the first one, and so there was a lot of time that was put into like building that relationship and like actually feeling like they cared, and like that was huge for me, and then it like that poured into how I then counsel as well. So
That's what, like, so with me and how I do my work, what I learned from when I went through it myself was the importance of including people who were left out. Whereas, like, you have that difficult, like, say, child that is like, no, I'm not going to participate. I don't want to do this. And it's so easy to just, like, stay with the parents because, like, this kid's not about it and they don't want to do it. They don't want anything to do with me. So, like, from just going through that with my own child, it made me want to try harder with clients that we have where they don't want to do it. Like, it's like you said, the joining process, it's so important just to get that little inch in the door.
I think also we can be a difficult client if the provider we're working with struggles with their own confidence and competence.
Absolutely.
Like if I show up and you're not at least projecting some confidence. One, I think that therapists are fairly good at being attuned and picking up on the subtle nuance. So if I am showing up as a professional that is like intimidating or scary to the therapist I'm working with, I'm going to struggle to trust that individual because they don't believe in themselves. So whenever I've sought therapy, especially like in more recent years, like when I was an early career clinician, almost everyone had more experience than I did. So I could show up and benefit from just about anyone. Although even then, I think fit was really important. Like I had some, like, gosh, I can remember the first couples therapist that my husband and I went to see. We went to 3 sessions. And by the end of the third, we're both like we just give each other the eyes. Like, you good? Yeah, I'm good. This is our last session. We don't schedule today. And like we had already kind of talked about it leading up. But the guy just didn't seem like he knew what he was doing. And he certainly didn't know what he was doing with us. And he almost told us that. Like, he had these worksheets for like conflict resolution, and he's like, but you don't have conflict, so I don't know how to help you. And it's like, well, I think that's part of our problem is we don't have healthy conflict. Like, we need help. Like, it's not that we don't have problems, we just don't talk about them. Like, our avoidant attachment styles send us opposite directions, and we are toxically independent. We need your help with that. But he didn't see it that way. He saw it as like, oh, you don't fight all the time, so I can't use these worksheets with you. And pretty quickly, we're like, you're not a fit for us. And we made the eyes and we walked away after that. So I think also there's that fit piece. I think there's also... but I think it's that confidence factor to me that if I show up and I feel like I'm too much for you, then I'm going to be smaller in that space. And that's not helpful in therapy.
Yeah, and it's important for the therapist to stay leaned in too. Like I'm the type of client that needs to be seen and heard a lot, like our family-based families
Yeah.
do. Like our caregivers want to be seen and heard in the same way that the child wants to be seen and heard. And so if I go to like a couples counseling session and I'm like sharing my side of a conflict, but my therapist is like focused on something else, I'm gonna like get defensive and be like, hey, no, like you did not hear me. This is my role and like this is what I said. And like so and it's like in our family based role too, it's kind of hard to stay neutral. So I can empathize with a therapist that has to do something like couples therapy or group counseling where they do have to maintain that neutral stance. But then it kind of matters how you do it. Like, can you do it well or can you do it at least 50% of the time where I know like both of us are going to be balanced out?
That makes me think of a situation I had with my first therapist, in which we had telehealth sessions, and I could tell that they were scrolling on their phone from like the reflection in their like glasses, right?
The audacity.
Like that's wild, right? Like and like obviously problematic in and of itself, right? Especially since it was like this was somebody who was very experienced, been in the field for a long time, was like came highly recommended by the person that was like kind of referred me to them, right? And I remember like going back to the person who like initially referred me and being like, I don't know about this. Like this seems like I know I haven't been a therapist very long, but I'm pretty sure Facebook not part of it, right? Like,
You're like, is this what y'all do?
I don't think that's I was like, I don't do this in my sessions, but granted, I don't do a lot of telehealth, so maybe that's the problem. And they told me, they were like, well, maybe you should say something. I was like, well, I don't want to say something to my therapist about this, right? That sounds like very uncomfortable.
Have to, right? Like,
Well,
no.
yeah. And I did end up having that conversation and be like, hey, do you scroll on your phone with all your clients, or like am I? I was really sarcastic. I was mean. I'll take it. But yeah, but like that did open up a conversation. It did force me to like face kind of that like conflict resolution and like dealing with things like that. And like overall, I think it still made me a better therapist and better client in the end, but like still a horrible situation.
It's just so funny because like we tell our clients like, hey, you need to speak up for yourself. You need to confront them. You need to like, figure this out. And when I was in that situation with like a different situation, I had a coworker telling me like, hey, that's not okay. Like you need to speak up about this. And I'm like, oh gosh, I don't want to do that. That's awful.
Yeah, I feel,
why would you tell me that?
I feel like that was the first time that I felt like, oh, there is a power differential between the client and the therapist, right?
Yeah.
Like, and like, it wasn't until I felt it from the other side that I was like, oh, like, of course your client's not going to feel comfortable like confronting you on this thing. And I think that's a perfect example of it.
Mm-hmm.
You brought up a really good point too, because I'm helping my cousin-in-law find a therapist, and like he's had a lot of hiccups with like trying to even get in the door, and so it's different when it's not you, right? Like when he's coming to me and being like, yeah, I had this appointment and then they canceled on me or they no-showed. I'm like, I didn't send you over there for them to ghost you. You want me to come up there and say something? But then if somebody came up to me and be like, you should probably tell your therapist that they make you uncomfortable, I'd be like, no. Like, I feel like they know better. And so then there becomes that differential too. Like, girl, look at your notes. Like, what are you doing? Why do I have to tell you to get off your phone? And then I don't want to have to do the thing, but then it's important to do it because therapy is like you want to get something out of it. And if you're not getting anything out of it, then it comes down to fit or joining or the model or whatever. You want to be able to leave that session and feel like I got exactly what I needed from that. And if you did not, then you definitely do have to speak up for yourself.
Well, I think there's a difference between feedback, like stylistic feedback versus professionalism feedback. Like I would argue saying you shouldn't be looking at Facebook while I'm talking about my childhood trauma. I don't know that that's my spot in a therapeutic I feel like as a therapist, all of us know we shouldn't be scrolling social media while conducting therapy. So that one's a bit shocking to me. I can also think about like some of my own therapeutic ruptures throughout my history. Never that egregious, but like I think the couples therapist that my husband and I dropped out on. I mean, the defining factor was when his phone rang in the middle of his session again, and it had the Futurama ringtone, which I
It's a
understand
bold.
is not a problem for everyone.
No.
But in the context of therapy, the Futurama theme song as your ringtone did belie your professionalism. And I'm not saying I'm I'm not the consummate professional, right? There are feedback I receive sometimes. It's like, Kim, you're too informal. Kim, you say the fuck too much. Kim, you could, be more professional in your communications in terms of the language you utilize, whatever. And I don't agree with all of that. Like, I think there is a place for a lack of professionalism within the therapeutic relation. Like, I think sometimes our clients tell us stories that are so wild that the only thing we can do is go, that's fucking wild. I think there's validation in that. I think there's authenticity in that. I think when you show up with darkness, if I show up with like, oh, well, how did that? Like, if I show up as like Dr. Ernest, I lose something in that encounter.
Yeah.
I also think there's a line between the Futurama ringtone and authenticity. I had a therapist once that was an amazing therapist, but showed up late all the time. And like, not just late, but like really, really, really fucking late, like 45 minutes to an hour late. That was really hard for me, and I had to give that feedback. I think that that's one space where it's okay to say, like, not a fit because professionalism is lacking. I think if it's stylistically, like, you're not hearing me, that's where our feedback. So that was a very long and winding road to show up. Like, professionalism feedback, I don't know that that's our space as a client. Stylistic feedback and how you can better help me. I think practicing that in the therapeutic relationship is really useful and effective practice for how we can have those conversations in other relationships, like how I can communicate to my partner how I'm support seeking, how I can communicate to a friend or a parent where my boundaries need to be. And I think there are different types of feedback and we have different burdens of responsibility as the client. Did I get there in the end? I took a really long path to get here.
I picked up what you put down.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Got it.
Thank you.
There was a comment. I'm sorry.
No, finish your thought.
There was a comment made about like the imbalance of like the therapeutic relationship, and it made me think of like, so in my experience being the ambivalent client, I actually had a very funny occurrence where I came to PCS and I entered and I ended up running into my old family-based therapist.
Oh.
Yeah. And
a fun
so
little
it
Spider-Man
made me
meme.
very curious of like, does that imbalance ever change? Because she's amazing. She's phenomenal and just like big brained and I love it. But I always found myself like stuck in that client field, like feeling like I was still the client, even though I wasn't. And even though I was well aware of it and there was nothing that was done that made me feel like I was still the client, even though I knew I wasn't the client, I felt like the client still.
That's such a unique example of a dual relationship, like that we don't like see very often, kind of thing.
We see, we truly, we try to prevent it more. I mean,
Yeah.
I can think of numerous instances over the last however many years where we have a candidate. And I think in some ways it's a huge compliment, right? Like, I had therapy, I had this experience, it impacted me in a way that now I want to do what you do. Like, to me, that's a huge compliment as a therapist. And we just got one of my former supervisees shared with me an email that she got from a former client that said, hey, you don't know this, but you impacted me in this way 8 years ago that I've now made these choices and these shifts, and now I'm doing this thing, not at PCS, not alongside of you. So I just want you to know, though, how you've impacted me. It like brought tears to my eyes. But a lot of the times we ask that on the form, I think in your like on the application, have you ever been in therapy? Was it ever with us? I think you didn't know because you were a kid that it was with us.
Yeah.
And there was this like surprise when you arrived because I remember when that moment happened and we're all like, oh shit, usually we stop that before it happens, but you were a kid, so you didn't know what to say.
Right.
We had this weird dual relationship that usually we cut up at the pass, but typically we have somebody that applies and says, hey, we did have that here in Lebanon. Mel Morgan was the therapist. Then Mel Morgan was the interviewer for the person, but the person had a different name. So she shows up and she's like, hey, you want to be a family-based therapist? And she's like, sure do. And Mel's like, do you remember me? Because I remember you.
Wild.
Okay. So, then we said, okay, you can join our team, but not in that county, or you can join our team, but not in that office or location. So we try to sort of cut it off at the pass. But I think you bring up a great point. We do small town work. And small towns are small towns. And how do we create both safety and space for those people to grow in the context of each other? It's wonky, though.
I think in my situation, at least for me personally, I feel like it went really well. Like, I put the application and I did like put in that like little place, whatever, that little tidbit. And I remember like I got a call and like they made me aware of it beforehand. So like I had that preparational piece and I took it upon myself to have that conversation with my previous therapist and like let her know how thankful I was for her, because even though I hated family based and I hated therapy and I hated family therapy, and at that point in time, I probably also didn't like my therapist. I was thankful for it because it was an experience, and I genuinely do attribute who I am today to some of the conversations that we had.
I want to say like the irony of us being partners, because like how it shows up in like the work we do since we work together. Like I have a caregiver perspective while she has the
Child.
IP perspective. So it's just like really interesting because we can bring different things from what we have experienced into like challenging each other or giving different perspectives.
I think it's, sorry, Kim.
No, I was just, my follow-up question, if you had not had your individual experiences on the client side of the line, how do you think that would influence your teaming dynamics today?
Ooh, that's a good
That
question.
is a really good question. I don't think I've ever really thought about it because I think it really does play a part in our partnership in the sense that like even when we have those moments where we see things literally like very differently, or even the way that we align with different clients, I think that like some of that is there.
Yeah, because it shows up in a way like how, it's hard to see the perspective of a certain client or something, and we're able to kind of like reframe it based on like our own experiences. So I'm wondering if it would like hinder our ability to find the strengths in some of the more difficult areas.
I was going to say, I feel like it widens our scope. Like it helps us be able to like look at everyone in a way that I feel like if we didn't have that experience, we wouldn't be able to do. Because of our experience, we attune as soon as we walk in because we already know how uncomfortable it is.
Wow, that was a bar.
Mic drop.
Can't really drop these.
Mic lower.
Yeah, I think that when I think the unique aspects of your experiences is that you had that in-home service. And I think being able to have an experience with the treatment modality that you provide can give us a different perspective that can be really useful. There's a client that I've supported sort of, I got connected with this caregiver through a professional place and then sort of backfilled in getting her connected to some services with PCS. So I still had this relationship with her, but then moved, it's wonky a little bit at times. And I know that her provider has tried to encourage this individual to take her family towards family based. And she doesn't want to do family based. And she told the therapist that, but then sort of pulled me in and said, well, you need to understand, like, you understand how invasive it would be to have an in home service. And I sure do. I mean, I grew up in a family system that we had. My brother was qualified for like 20 hours of MTBC a month and, 40 to 45 hours a week of TSS, it was called at the time. It's BHT ABA now. We had somebody in my household all the time. Like, I remember growing up, one of my brother's we also had like in-home music therapy, in-home occupational therapy. Like, I remember growing up, my family system had these different members of the ecosystem pretty regularly. So while I don't disagree that it can be invasive, I need to name that I also know how helpful it can be and how meaningful it can be, and how the absence of those things can be really scary and really dangerous for a family system. So, like, I can see both sides of that coin. I understand your concerns, and I know the power that it has. And I think being a recipient of therapy and a recipient of services, both individually and from a family system, also has made me believe in our work so much more. Because I don't just believe in it intellectually, but from a lived experience perspective, I know what it can do. But I don't know that I would have that within the app. So should we mandate trainees to go to therapy? Should we say that's a part? In my grad program, we talked about this before we started recording. My grad program, you had the option. You could do 12 sessions or write a 40-page paper. Some people opted for the paper. I have questions about those some people. And I think the data suggests about only 80% of therapists have actually done their own therapy. So should we require it?
You said that 80% have done?
Have done.
Wow, that number's like way higher than I thought it would be, actually.
That's according to this article on ResearchGate. So I'm sure the data's variable, but 80% of therapists say they have been in therapy at some point over the course of their career.
So if we look at it in terms of like the question that was posed to you of like the 12 sessions or write a paper, I'm not going to lie to you, I would take the paper. I would be the one to take the paper. And you know what I would write my paper about? My experience in family base.
Oh my god.
I'm not doing those 12 sessions because I've already done my time.
I've already done. Release me from the shackles of therapy.
Yeah, see, I've never written 40 pages of anything. I'm not starting today. Like, I'll do the 12 sessions. That sounds way easier.
I don't know. I feel like if it was mandated, it would have to be like an actual like. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I'm a little picky about like what kind of therapist I would go to see, or like choices, or I'd want like recommendations, or
yeah, maybe if it was mandated or like heavily suggested with like recommendations, because I could see that being like, you're not like, then people would be ODD about it, like, no, because you're gonna make me do it, I'm not gonna do it. But a lot of your own personal work comes into the therapy space when you are the therapist, and when you don't do the work beforehand or in conjunction to, I feel like it causes a lot of damage to the families, like, because you haven't learned how to work through your own stuff. So how do you then come in to somebody's house, or how do you have somebody come to your office and then help them work through their stuff, right? Like, you don't have the tools, so how do you give them to somebody else?
Yeah, I think the transference side of things, of realizing, and sometimes you don't know until it happens. Like that's what it was for me. I remember going to my supervisor and being like, I think I'm having a panic attack. I didn't know what this was.
Oh my gosh, that's so terrifying.
Right? I was like, am I dying? I think I'm dying. I wasn't sure. And like, I had no idea. I had never experienced anything like it before. And it was after a particularly like difficult client who was like kind of pushing all the right buttons that I didn't even know could be pushed. I was like, I'm a very like chill person. I'm good. I don't have any problems. And then that was kind of like the thing that pushed me into going, okay, maybe I should like talk to someone about this. But I feel like at least having like, if it had been in grad school where they said, hey, like, just go 3 or 4 sessions. We're going to, like, it's all covered. You don't have to worry about it. Like, it's just so you can see what it's like from the other side. Like, that would have just been like even if it was just part of a class, like an assignment, like go. Like when we took an addictions class, we had to go sit in on an AA meeting to see what that was like. When we did a group class, we had a group that we were a part of for that, cohort or whatever. But like we never actually had like therapy for ourselves to see what it was like from the other side. And I think that's what would have been like vastly more valuable.
Yeah, sure. Because not around this time. I would have been done by this time last year. Last winter was like the hardest winter I've had some hard winter. Me and winter, we don't get along. Let me just
Fuck
start there.
winter.
We don't get along.
Summer's my favorite season, actually.
Wow, that was
Sorry.
whiplash.
Very
No,
intense.
you gotta stand on that,
Well,
Kim.
winter's hurting you, and that bothers me. But I love winter.
She didn't mean it.
Yeah,
We
I didn't
just
mean it,
in the
winter,
moment.
baby. I'm sorry. Take me back. Anyway, Cece, I'm cutting you off. Go
No,
ahead.
it's okay. But long story short, me and Winters don't get along. And so this winter particularly was like, I was down abysmal, like not sleeping well, not eating well, not showering well, like not even really talking to my friends or my family members. I don't think I had a car around that time. And I was doing this job and, still billing the 33 hours, 35 hours or whatever. And it got to the point where my supervisor was like, I feel like if you are this bad emotionally, like I worry about how you're showing up to your clients. And at the time I was like, girl, fuck you. Like my clients are great. Like we're over here chilling. I don't even know what you're talking about. But then she sat me down and she's like, no, seriously. And then I had to really think about it and be like, yeah, you're kind of right. Like I wanted to 302 myself. So then to come to a client's house and be like, yeah, it's all puppies and rainbows. They're like, that's bullshit. And I see it. Like, are you good, girl? And I can't be like, no, please help me. Like, because I'm the therapist. Like they're looking at me to be like, how do I navigate this difficult relationship with my child? And I'm having difficult relationships myself. And so then I'm showing up and I'm like, well, truth be told, I don't really give a shit about your difficult relationship right now. I am going through hell. And so having that, in the moment, I remembered when they sat me down and said, we are so concerned about you. And I was just like, whatever. I am so thankful that they had that conversation with me and I was able to do my own work. Because when I came back, it was so refreshing. And I think because one of the things we talk about in family-based too is kind of how clients, this is a horrible metaphor, but how clients are kind of like guard dogs, right? Like they can smell fear, anxiety. They can smell when you don't like them. They can smell trauma. And so when you come in and you present as though you are you're putting on a facade, they will smell that out and they will call it out. And sometimes it's not outright, to your face, but it's kind of subtle, hey girl, I made these cupcakes. Do you want maybe one of them to take home to your fiance, right? Or the kids they don't really care. They'll be like, yeah, you're kind of horrible right now. So I'm so thankful that they were able to kind of sit me down and do that work. And then that's how I ended up doing group therapy, because I did an intensive outpatient. And so they had it was 3 days a week. I had a kind of a psycho ed group, and then a processing group in the afternoons. And then I did DPT, which I thought was going to change my entire life. But to be honest, that I don't even know where that binder's at. So it felt good in the moment, but she and I are also just not close friends at the moment.
So I think you're bringing up that piece of the stigma and shame of acknowledging that we need something bigger than we presently have to be okay. And it sounds like yours arrived when you had a trusted supervisor who you were able to hear sit you down and say, essentially your work product isn't failing, but I'm worried about you in the context of your work, and I'm worried that there are pieces of what you're dealing with personally that's bleeding into your professional self.
Oh yeah, because like I said, at the time when she brought it to my attention, I was like, girl, fuck you, we're good over here. But my clients at the time were like, you look really tired. I would have kids. My clients at the time were 14, 15, 16. I would have my clients come up to me and say, are you good? You're not really yourself. You look really tired. sometimes I would kind of cheat. Like if I hadn't eaten that day, I'd be like, "Oh, you want to go to McDonald's?" And I'd like, you can't throw McDonald's at a kid, and they'll tell you no. So I'm like, "Yeah, let's go to McDonald's," and they're like, "Oh, you haven't eaten today," and I'm like, so then they became almost like the therapist to me, and so like I'm kind of ODD in that nature of just like I gotta talk shit first, and then I like to think about it. So when they brought it to my attention, like I couldn't even remember clients saying that to me or like acting like that towards me until I really sat down with myself and said like, yeah, like I've had probably 4 sessions in the past couple of weeks where clients have been like, you don't look good and you don't sound good. And so like I said, I'm so thankful to have had that experience because bringing it kind of full circle to what we were talking about earlier, without those clients and my supervisor bringing that to my attention, I probably could have did a lot more damage as a therapist.
No, I think you bring up the point that I think is important for us to hover on for a moment, which is that any of us at any point in time could be called to do this job with a limp.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean that we can't do our job, but it does mean at times we need extra safeguards or like there's parts that we either need to look at, we need to slow down, we need to take time away, we need like it, and that doesn't mean that life's not going to happen to us. Like I know as providers at any given moment, like I mean we all we're called to be therapists. What maybe not you might have still been in college, but the rest of us were called during the pandemic where you were still in college in 2020, right?
Yeah.
And so that's okay. That's all right. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't making global generalizations. You were struggling with something different, which is how do we learn in this new context? I think many of us were being called to figure out like how do we do therapy in this new context, while also some of our own shit was probably pretty highly activated during that season. I know mine was, so I'll speak for me. But the threat of a global pandemic has been something I've been afraid of my entire life. So when it became real, I was like, oh shit, this is stirring up stuff in me that belies my effectiveness. But I think I was still able to be a therapist with that particular limp and separate from it. Like hear my client, because all my clients, all they're talking about is the pandemic and the anxiety and working from home. And my kids are on telehealth sessions now. And I had a lot of clients in recovery where they're trying to navigate their own recovery in the context of the pandemic. And I'm not in recovery, but I sure was drinking more in 2020 and in those early years. So how are we effective in those spaces? But I do know that there was a point in 2020 where I became ineffective. And it was because my personal life took a massive shit. My husband lost his father-in-law within 2 months. My husband lost his father, my father-in-law within 2 months. My brother passed away. Then our dog died. Then my best friend and one of my closest long-term friends at the time had a pulmonary embolism while giving birth. And so I remember, and I have this therapy session that I'll share with anyone who wants to see me in the worst version of therapist I've ever been. But you notice at a certain point, I fix my hair and I have a hospital band on from breaking into the hospital during COVID to visit my friend and visit her baby. Now, they were both fine in the end.
Yeah.
So I want to lead with that. Like pulmonary embolisms are really scary things. She and her baby were both okay in the end, but I didn't know that in doing that therapy session. And so I'm watching this therapy session thinking like, am I high? Like, am I drunk? Like, I am so misattuned to this client. He's saying things and not only am I not reflecting it, I am just saying other random ass things that are completely divorced. I am not hearing his tone. I am not attending to what's important to that client because I wasn't scrolling Facebook. Good news. Good news.
Facebook was safe.
Good.
I wasn't on social media. I wasn't chemically impaired, but I was an impaired professional.
Yeah.
I wasn't present. My own shit was too loud that I wasn't seeing that client. And I think that was the moment where I was like, shit, I need to get back into therapy. But I didn't see it until I watched that tape back truly, I was using this to teach my supervisees a specific therapeutic modality. I was trying to teach them cognitive processing therapy. And I watched it back and I was like, that is a shit session. I am a terrible therapist. I need to delete this, burn this, and never show it to anyone ever again. And instead, what I did was I took it. One, I went back to the client and repaired and said, wow, I screwed up. And I didn't self-disclose, but I said I had too much of my own stuff going on. I wasn't present for you and I'm sorry. And now I show it to my supervisees, not as this is how you do cognitive processing therapy, which is what it was intended to be, but as this is how you don't do therapy.
Yeah.
And when you are where I was, you cancel the fucking session. You don't show up and power through.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I wish I would have
cancel
had that
the
advice.
session.
Yeah, because I think as therapists, like it's really hard. Like there's a lot of guilt around canceling sessions. Of, like these families need me. I can't cancel this session. Like they will be fine. Like because even in that season that I had, that winter season where we were beefing, like exceptionally hard that day. Like my client, she would we were actively triggering each other because I remember this session that we had. We were out in the community and I had a new partner. He's not new to the company. It's Jake. He and I were partners. Yeah. He and I were partners for a hot second. And I had this case where we took the client out into the community and it was kind of like trying to tear two cats apart from each other.
Poor Jake.
He's just trying to chill. Like, Jake is so nice and sweet. He's just trying to vibe. And he's like, we get down in this specific spot. And he's like, okay, well, what do you guys want to do next? And I looked to the client and I said, well, it's your session. What do you want to do next? She's like, I don't know. I'm like, that's not an answer. Jake's like, whoa. Because, she and I had, so there's another layer to it too. She and I had similar attachment styles. So I was going through my summer of my season of shitstorm. And then to have this client actively trigger me while I'm in this season, and then I'm triggering her, he's just like, okay, I'll figure it out. We'll just get in the car and see where it takes us. And I'm like, yeah, you do that, Jake, because I'm not, this is her session. I'm not gonna tell her where to go. It was a hot mess. So I wish I could go back in time and just have a GoPro during those times and being having that to watch myself be like, when you told V to go fuck herself because she told you needed therapy, yeah, you should probably, apologize. And I think I did at some point, with a Ferrero Rocher. I was like, sorry, I was a bitch to you. Here's chocolate. I didn't mean it. I'm just sad.
I feel like that's why it's so important to have the people around you, the supervisions, your team, your partner. I don't know what you have an outpatient. But
We do have people. We're not all alone. We're not all alone.
Prison over there. Nothing.
Well, I'm pretty sure, I don't know about you guys. I can't speak for you, but I have that toxic trait where when I have my own shit going on, I want to go out and just avoid it completely. And I'm going to drown myself in work. I'm going to go in there and I'm not going to realize that I'm not at my best because I'm going to tell myself that, oh, I can compartmentalize this. I can go into the session and be a completely different person.
Yeah, I know how to separate business and pleasure. You don't. They're in there. They're holding hands, girl. You got to go in there.
And that's why it's so important to have people to call you out on your shit.
But I think in my own effort to be fine, I wasn't noticing the way it was impacting my psychotherapy, my leadership, my supervision. It had bled into every aspect of my profession. My personal life had bled into every aspect of my professionalism with a complete absence of insight on my part. I didn't see it. During that time then I got back into therapy, which I needed to do. I also reinitiated supervision, which was really helpful to me. I felt like I had had some skill drift. But how do we reduce the barriers to providers feeling comfortable doing that? Because I do still think there's a stigma of, well, I'm the therapist now, so maybe it's something, we did therapy in grad school. Everyone loves a story of overcoming, right? Everyone loves the past tense. I went to therapy, I made the changes, but no one, especially in this field, is as open to the current, hey, I'm really struggling and I need to tune up now, or else my work is going to suffer. So how do we get rid of that stigma professionally to create space for it?
I mean, I have been very open about my therapeutic journey, like, especially with new people that come in, because I'm in Lancaster County. So any new people that come in, and again, I have that layer of like knowing what it's like to be new in the same way that you guys do too. Like when new people come in and they're trying to learn Lighthouse, they're trying to learn how to document, they're trying to understand the model, and they're trying to do all this at the same time. They're like, I am a mess. Like, I don't know how to do this. And I'm like, try doing this while you're mentally ill. Like, and so I kind of just share my journey with them. Like, around this time, girl, like, I wasn't, fuck the notes. I wasn't doing the notes. Like, I wasn't using supervision like I was supposed to. I wasn't showing up. I wasn't asking the questions. And so, like, I share that so that you see what I did. Like, you know, I overcame the storm, and you will too. Like, so just lean on the people that you have here. Like, if you go to somebody and they're not giving you what you need in this context, like, I'm here for you. And like, text me, call me. I'll help you out, and I'll, you know, share more of my experience with you if that'll help. So just opening the conversation too. I think you were saying that a little bit too before we recorded. Like, it would have been nice to have that at least suggested, or maybe it might have been you, Ashley. It might have been nice to just have some suggestions of like, if you were going to do this journey, maybe we don't mandate it, but we do have some recommendations of like, these are the different therapy types you could explore. This is how you would get started. This is how you do an intake, you know, that sort of thing.
Also, I wanna go for free therapy.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
yeah.
because I want to say there is a stigma, but there's also barriers like
Financially, yeah.
copays. Like,
yeah.
some people can't afford the copays.
Oh, yeah.
Some people can't find the time to work it into their schedule. Like, there's so many things that go into it, let alone the stigma.
Yeah, because my copay went from $50 to $100, and I remember like my bank account. Like, I looked at it like, where y'all get this extra $50 from? And then my therapist is like, hey, girl, I don't know if you know this, but your copay just went up. And like, if that was me peak wintertime when I was already crashing out, I'd be like, girl, I never want to see you again. You're a nice lady, but I never want to see you again. But now that I'm in a better space, I can, like, you know, I understand that those things happen. But for the common layperson with a lower SES, or doesn't know a lot about therapy, or is already hesitant to go in the first place, having even that minor inconvenience is like, okay, well, fuck it, I'm not going to do it.
No, I think it's important for us to have big eyes for the practical barriers. I think that does bring me to like that initial question of how can our training programs better prepare individuals to do this type of work? And I know a lot of universities do have like counseling centers and options there that can at least give folks like a couple of sessions for free. I don't know to what extent those things are options at like at every university. I know my universities, the ones that I had attended, you would have the option of the counseling center, and you could get up to like 6 sessions a semester through those modalities. But I think it all depends on the university. It all depends on the training center. It all depends on, are you aware of what the resources are to you? And then, like Cece, you had identified, like I was in a darker spot maybe than what 6 sessions at a university counseling center was going to get the job done. And so I had very practical barriers to getting to the resources you need.
Oh yeah, like no joke. I was one paper cut away from like I'm driving my car off the road. I can't I can't do anything else. And I have personal friends and family members who are similar. They're kind of always in a storm, or they're kind of always struggling with something. And so again, that one minor inconvenience is like, that's it. I'm not doing this anymore.
And how to find it, how to get into. I mean, my kiddo needed some services 2 years ago, year ago, and I was pretty desperate pretty quick because he was about to get kicked off the bus, and Buddy can't get kicked off the bus. I can't take him to and from school every day. Got to stay on that bus. I called 16 different offices before I found anyone that would see him. And if I were to be transparent, I found someone to see him because I called a former coworker. I called somebody who had left PCS. I knew I couldn't do it within PCS. That would be unethical. But you left long enough ago that maybe you could help me. And I think you liked me when you left. Will you please help me? And fortunately, she would, and she could, and she did. But I would imagine many parents stall out before they get to the 16th call. And I have a lot of empathy for that as well. Like that would be really hard. So,
Yeah, they made the process a little bit easier so that people could maintain their stamina
yes.
to do those things. I think too, like what we've been talking about a lot is it helps to have a lot of people and it helps to have
Yeah.
a support system. For my clients, I am kind of like their guard dog therapist. Like if any case management action that they have, like, oh, I need to make this doctor's appointment, but I've made 3 calls and nobody's gotten back to me, or I need a caseworker, or I'm like, girl, them people hate to see me coming because they know me by name. Like, I will get in there. Why don't my people have what they say they need? Like, I will go and ask the questions and jot down and write down, like, okay, we spoke to Maria at 10:58 on October 31st, and then we spoke to Carlos on like October, like, like I'll do all of that too, but like that's a full-time job, and so to ask somebody to do that on top of struggling, it's just like I wish we could just make all of this easier.
Well, and yeah, the making it easier, I think, is huge because like I think of the school that I went to, very small school, like it was like 350 people, it's very small, and we had a counseling center on campus. However, if you wanted to get counseling, you had to go to the dean of students, you had to like talk to the dean of students, then you had to like get in for like an intake, and then there's a whole process. Half of the therapists who were there were like student therapists. There was a few that were, either teachers or whatever, but like we were using it as a training center as well. And so there was only a handful that you could take, and it like cost, they were like cash only. There was no insurance. They were not taking insurance at the time. They had like a scholarship-y type program that like if you were a student, you could like get discount, but like it was still pretty expensive. My wife, on the other hand, her and my brother both went to the same school. Their school, free therapy. They had golden retriever puppies. They had massage chairs that you could come in and use in between sessions.
All you need is a snack and a dog, and I am there.
Yeah, they really like sold therapy there. Like, and they had like people on staff who were not affiliated with. They weren't students. They weren't teachers. They were just there as therapists who were doing the school. And like, I mean, the school was bigger, but I mean, it was still a relatively small private school. So like, it means that like you could do it if they want to prioritize mental health and wellness as part of their program.
Well, I worked at Starbucks too during the pandemic, which was fun, but
Was it? Okay.
it had its moments. But they had at the time that I got hired, you could do telehealth for, I think I got 10 sessions for free.
Wow.
And maybe like sometimes too, I know there's a stigma around telehealth because it's not in person and it's on the screen, and you don't know what that person's doing, they don't know what you're doing, that sort of thing. But it gets you in the door, right? So if maybe we started with like a stepping stool of like you get like maybe 5 to 10 or 12 sessions telehealth, you see what it looks like, and then maybe that person can help you get in the door with another provider that's more in person. Or the problem with that is it's a little difficult because like my current therapist is at King of Prussia. So when I say like, I think I want a different type of therapy, not that not that I want to break up with you per se, but like, I think I want to do something more intensive. She's only knowledgeable of the resources in her area. So she'll send me King of Prussia references. I'm like, girl, that's an hour and some change away from me. I'm not going over there for therapy. But so then it's kind of, it puts me back at square one because there are steps that I have to look within my area. They have to be in network. I have to be like, they have to take my insurance. I have to afford the copay. And it's a lot of, again, it comes down to a lot of steps where if they maybe sold it to people in that way and then had that like, here are some sessions that like you can just kind of see what it looks like, get you in the doorway, and then we'll move on from there. Maybe that is how and make it free. Yes, I didn't forget.
Well,
I know I was looking at you for something. For free. We'll put that little bow on it. You'll be good to go.
I think too, though, like especially if maybe one of the first times that we're asking these people, therapists to be clients themselves is when they're in school, then making that the best possible experience is also probably a good thing as well. I know that part of my hesitation to go to therapy myself was because that I didn't think that the therapy at the school was that good. So, but if I had maybe experienced the other way, maybe that would have been better. Yeah.
You like doubt them. They're like, puppy? You're like, okay, now you're talking.
Yeah.
Like, wait a
Massage
second.
chairs. Yeah.
I do like the telehealth option as well, though.
Yeah.
Because I think most people can at least find room for that. Now, if you're getting telehealth, it needs to be an attuned telehealth therapist that's going to be present and showing up and some of those different pieces. And I think accessibility for telehealth is pretty broad today. But there are certain biases against telehealth. And I guess my bias falls the other direction. Like, I think the data surrounding telehealth has been really promising. I've been both a client of and a provider of telehealth, and I felt the value on both sides of that line. So I really like the telehealth modality. Also, personally, I couldn't do in-person therapy right now. Like, based on my role and my position at PCS, I need to get far enough away from that to be able to show up as a client. And I'm not going to drive to PCS doesn't exist in King of Prussia. I could go there to get away from my sphere of influence. But I'm not gonna.
No, these gas prices, girl.
No, I don't have time. When would I do that? When would I have a 6 hours in my day to drive, get therapy, come back? No, so I'm going to do telehealth because while it might be imperfect, it's way better than what I have available to me.
And I
So
would say my telehealth therapist is really good at holding me accountable for the session space that I'm in too. Like, if
Yes.
I do a session and I'm driving, she's like, "Hey, next time I meet with you, you need to not be driving." If I have a session and my fiance's in the background, "Hi, next time I see you, you need to make sure you have your own private space." Like, she is on it. Like, girly is getting her money. But
And I think
Yeah.
when we're the telehealth provider, setting and maintaining those same, I think there's ways to make telehealth more effective. We just have to have broader boundaries surrounding it. So our research suggests that over half of those within the counselor, social work, psychologist field disclose the experience of burnout. That data is getting worse since 2020. So we've seen that data continue to increase since 2020. Maybe we're talking about it more. Maybe it's a true reflection of the experience. I think well over half, so about 52% describe burnout, but about 63% describe some level of vicarious trauma, that the work that they do, they carry more heavily, they're more tired, they're less effective, or they feel either less emotionally connected to or too overly emotionally connected to their clients and their problems. So how do we use our own therapy as providers in addressing that problem?
It's funny you mentioned the vicarious trauma. And my first therapist I had, we had only maybe had 2 or 3 sessions, and I was trying to explain the panic attacks that I was feeling, like some of these stories that were being told, and I was like, I've never experienced any of this stuff. I didn't have like a traumatic childhood. I had a really great childhood. Like, my family's great. I'm like still close with everybody. Like, everything's been great. And in not so many words, she said to me, that's probably why you're now dealing with the anxiety and panic attacks, is because your family did love you a lot and you didn't experience bad things growing up. And now you're hearing people talk about the worst of the worst types of stuff. And gosh, like, no human being should have to experience it, let alone like also have to hear about it and process it too. So I definitely think that's a huge part of it. And that was something that was really big in learning some like skills and applying them and processing that in my own therapy as well.
yeah, family based. I don't know about you two, Shay and Ashley, but even in family base, we sometimes get the worst of the worst, and vicarious trauma is so hard to deal with. I remember I had a client who was, I think, 14 and very aggressive. My partner at the time was an older black lady, and she was on call and for our client. And when they called her, I mean, she was telling me the things that she went out and saw. I guess her and the client and the mom had gotten into an argument. Like a friend that came over and like further instigated the incident, and then at one point the client pushed her mom down the stairs. She had like this huge knot on her face. She was all banged up and bruised. Like the ambulance came and everything. She was sobbing hysterically when my partner got there. And the way, like, when we had supervision right after that, she was describing it to me. She was like, I went and responded to this crisis call. And the mom was like hysterical. Like, she was just like, I can't believe she did this. And I don't know what to do. She put her hands on me and I just love her so much. I don't know how to help her. And the more she described it, the heavier my body felt. Like, my supervisor has a beanbag chair in the corner of her office. I'm already on the floor. And by the end of the story, I'm like laying down on the floor. Like, I am so emotionally bogged down by this, this experience that you are sharing, because it is like, where do we go from here? How do we support this family? How does the mom move forward? Like, with, she had to go in the ambulance and be in the back of an ambulance car, and like she'd like fractured a rib and like all types of stuff. And so like, I guess that's a question that I always feel like I'm asking, is like, how do I move forward with some of the stuff that we are hearing, because it is really, really bad and hard and intense stuff, and it will impact you
Yeah.
because you're human.
For me, I feel like that's where I sound like such a therapist saying this. Self-care.
Girl, I don't know self-care.
No, like
I'm
self-care
trying
though
to get to
is
know
the
her.
answer, right? Like and being in your own therapy is part of the self-care. Like it's all part of it.
You kind of ate with that. I'm gonna let you
And
know.
boundaries. And boundaries.
Also some boundaries.
And boundaries. Because, like, for me, like, almost every client we come in contact with is going to trigger me, like, just off that.
Yeah.
So it's like having that moment to reflect. And for me, a really big reflection that I like to tell myself is that I'm choosing to be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, like, what makes that, like, genuinely sit with me is the fact that, like, I'm sure if we were to go back and ask my therapist, like, how my family was in family base, they probably thought that, like we didn't even, like, have a successful discharge. Like, we got discharged due to non-compliance. So, like...
Yeah,
So,
the
like...
scandal.
So it's like... And, like, every session turned into a crisis. Like, there was a lot there. So I think that sometimes, even now, being on the therapist end, we encounter some of these families and we're like, oh my goodness, like, I can't see the light at the end of this tunnel. I don't know how to give them light. Like, I don't know how to be hopeful for them. And for me, so when I genuinely say that, like, I choose to be part of the solution, me being there is part of the solution.
Mm-hmm.
Because I genuinely mean it when I say that, like, I don't even know if I could have coped with having a family like mine, and now I keep getting them. But, but, like, even in the families that you think there's no good and there's no good to come and you can't see the light, something happens. Because, like, with my family, like, I happened. And so,
There are positive shifts. Like, when our families get done crashing out and they're like done venting, like, one of the things I always tell them is like, look at where you're at now. Like, if you didn't have those experiences, you wouldn't be the person you are today. Like, it taught you how to advocate. It taught you how to be fierce. It taught you how not to take shit from people. Like, and sometimes you just need to hear that too. Like, we hear a lot of really hard stuff, but it's making you the therapist you are today. I try not to get flowery about self-care because I'm still trying to get to know her. Like, she and I need to go on a dinner date or something.
girl, it's a process.
But I know, it's hard.
Like,
Self-care is hard.
I am huge on self-care, and I find myself going through, like, evolutions of self-care where, like, I was telling Ashley this just yesterday, how, like, I'm coming up on my year of being in family base, and I do not feel like the same person I was walking in. Like, walking in, my self-care was reading and meditating and praying outside. Now, my self-care looks so much different than that. Like, it's still along the same, like, lines, but it's just so much different.
Yeah.
Like, even just the books that I read or where I read the books. Like, I've gravitated more towards music than books. I've gravitated back to writing poetry, which was something that I used to do when I was a kid. Like, it's figuring out what's helpful to you in this season. because it does change.
Yeah.
Do you think, though, that you would have adapted your self care strategies in the absence of the suffering of the job?
Yes and no. And I say yes and no just because even when I look back, like I said, like I used to write when I was younger. And this was before my family-based days. I would write. I stopped. I've just recently gotten back into writing. And so I think that it would have changed because it is an evolution. I think that it just would have looked differently than what it is now. Because something triggered my inner child enough to have her scream out, we need to start writing again.
It's kind of like you're forced into it. Like,
That was beautiful.
Yeah.
How I got into spicy romance, by the way. My inner child wouldn't be reading that because it's inappropriate, but that's how I got into spicy.
I don't know. My
romance.
inner child, like Wattpad.
Sorry, we're not sponsored. Take that out, guys.
But no, because like, at least for me in my experience, like this job, it's triggering for anyone. It just triggers us in different ways.
Yeah.
So like, for me, and I guess that's why I would take the paper rather than the 12 sessions, because I've learned through family-based that there's different ways of tuning into yourself. And right now I have especially right now, we have clients that genuinely trigger that inner child in me. And what's helpful for me is that when I tune back into that inner child didn't want therapy. That inner child wanted to be seen and heard and hugged. So that's what I'm giving myself right now. Cece, don't look at me like that.
I don't want to hug you.
No, please
Okay.
don't.
Okay. I respect your boundaries.
I'll give you a hand hug.
Okay.
But I think another thing about boundaries too, and I think this is probably different depending on what area of therapy and such that you work in. But like, I know when I was doing, I was running IOP, drug and alcohol groups. I pretty quickly realized that after a while of doing it, and then also after some things happened within my family that were like related, and I had some family that had some substance use issues, I realized that I could not keep doing that, and that I like needed to step back, and that like a boundary that you set, a self-care that you do could be just like retreating a little bit. Like that's totally a viable option, is like, okay, maybe I can't do IOP anymore. That's maybe too acute of clients. Maybe it's too intense, whatever. Maybe I need to just take a step back and do some other stuff. And that's been really good too.
I think there's a piece of it, though, that involves the recognition and acknowledgement about how the work is affecting
Yeah,
you.
hugely.
And I think we don't. I think in general, we come from a culture of avoidance. And
Oh, yeah.
I don't think therapists are immune to avoidance in that. And so I think there are times where we failed to, like you mentioned, like something at work brushed up against something in your own story in a way that felt uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I think you, at that point, have a choice. And it sounds like in that moment, you chose to listen to the discomfort that was emerging. I think there are times where we as providers sacrifice ourselves on the altar of community mental health or therapy, and we choose to say, even we could say like, oh yeah, that doesn't feel good, but I'm good, I got this, I'm fine, it's okay, I'm fine. And we don't listen to that voice that says like, you're not fine. None
Right.
of this is fine. And I think not listening to that voice is where the danger is. And then you had started to say something, and I talked over you. So
No,
let's go back to it.
I think that's super true. And it's funny because I recognized, I was like, okay, probably should stop. But then there was the other part of me that was like, but who's going to do it if I don't, right? Like, so like, I don't want to like inconvenience somebody else to take over or whatever. And then that's when I think I mentioned that to my therapist, and this was therapist 2.0 at this point. And that therapist was like, you got to be kidding me, right? Like, come on. Like, it was a much more like real, honest conversation of like, all right, like you understand this isn't sustainable, right? Like you could white knuckle it for as long as you want, but eventually something's gonna have to give. And that's when I was like, okay. And I started to take the steps, and it took some time, but it was like, gosh, the relief that I felt when I was like, okay, I'm not doing IOP by myself anymore. I'm not doing this really intense work. Instead, I'm gonna step back and do some other stuff for a little while. It was huge relief, but it still took a second.
Yeah.
You helped me think of like A lot of the times, we as therapists need help practicing the skills that we're telling our clients to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially with boundaries. Like, my therapist was kind of helping me. Well, before I go into that, like a little backstory lore, my signature theme and family base is for a while it was trying to be assertive. Like, when I was in my first year of family base, I had a partner who was so knowledgeable, and she talked a lot more than I did at the time. So I just felt like if there was no space for me, I wouldn't take it. And so I had to learn to like make space for myself. And part of how I did that was she left, so that helped a lot too, because then I had to. But my therapist was also helping me practice the skill of like being assertive and asking for what you need, and not even in an aggressive confrontational way, but just saying like, no, I don't like, this is what I want and this is what I am going to get. And I think therapists sometimes, on our end, we kind of live in our like expert bubble sometimes. We don't always realize or remember what it was like to be the student and not the teacher. And so sometimes you need help practicing what you preach.
My question that keeps showing up for me based on what you both have shared in this space is, how do we know the difference between what is developmentally normative discomfort? So we know by and large, early career clinicians are far more likely to struggle with stress and burnout than more seasoned providers. And we know at least a percentage of those folks never get beyond it. Like, they use it, like that is the reason they leave the field or go a different direction. And I think there is discomfort that happens from this job that overlaps with our origin story in a way that's painful. I think there are times where we can look at that and work through it, and it can almost become a superpower in doing that work. I also think there's a time where we can look at that and through looking at it, recognize that that's going to be a gap in our treatment moving forward. Like I grew up with a severely autistic and intellectually disabled little brother. When I came into the field, I was going to be a BCBA that specialized in autism. When I did that, it was during a time in our history as a system of care in which any client showing any gains meant that they were going to lose aspects of their services. So part of my job during that season was not just providing services to the family, but then also helping the family assess their services and their child in the context of those services, and then having to go back to the family and saying, hey, so because this kid got a little bit better, managed care cut your hours in half. And that was devastating to me. Like, that I carried so heavy, it kept me up at night. I hate to use the word traumatic flippantly, but I can still it still feels like a trauma today, despite it being like 20 some years ago, right? It shouldn't be, but it is. And because of that experience, I said, I can't do this work anymore. I can't work with these families anymore. I can't work with these kids anymore. So the hard left I took was working with sex offenders and sitting with people as they disclosed horrific things that they have done to little humans or historically marginalized or disenfranchised populations. And that work was so different and so hard from a different angle. And so, I mean, on one hand, like I'm a woman, you can probably discern that from my physical presentation. And so as a woman, I have had the experiences that most women have had that have not always been positive in the areas of like sexuality, gender identity, being dismissed. However, I do not have severe sexual trauma. So I'm able to show up from this space from a woman that's had traditional female experiences without being part of the 1 in 4 who identifies as somebody who's had a sexual assault history. And so I asked myself the question that you asked yourself, with, if it's not me, then who's going to do it? And I stuck with doing the sexual trauma work much longer than I had ever stuck with the BCBA work. I can do sexual trauma work today, I think, pretty effectively. and it doesn't affect me the way it did 20 years ago. I went through a lot of pain and discomfort to get there, but it sort of comes down to that good pain versus bad pain. Like, you know how, like, if you're training or running or exercising, like, you have to decide, like, am I pushing my body and I'm going to be stronger because of it? Or am I pushing my body and I'm going to have an injury or like a heart attack because of it? And I think in therapy, we need to ask ourselves those same questions, but it often looks the same. And I was just with a bunch of BCBAs yesterday, and I found myself wondering, like, man, if I had gotten to the other side of my childhood trauma, would I be an even better BCBA today than I am a sex offender therapist if I could only get to the other side? And when I felt that pain and backed off, was that, and I don't fucking know, and I'll never get to know. I'm not going back in time. I'm not switching gears now. I'm in too deep, right? I'm in too deep. This is my lane. I'm staying in my lane. And I need to ask myself, and so I guess my question to each of you is, where is your line in making that decision between good pain versus bad pain? Because the experience of being resilient as a therapist hurts every time, but sometimes we're stronger for it, and sometimes we die for it. And how were I, if you were to come to me and say, Kim, how do I know? How do I know that this is countertransference that I need to look at and grow from versus countertransference that I need to set a boundary in my practice and say that's not work I can do? And I can't say I know I know what I did. Was it the right path? And so what would y'all say is your nuance there? How do you decide when your personal story becomes a superpower as a therapist, or when your personal story becomes a boundary that you must set as a provider to maintain your own safety and the safety of those you serve?
Yeah, I think. Sorry, no, you go.
I think it's a tolerance level. Like well, you also have to be very self-aware, but it's also a tolerance level. Like, can you manage this? Can you hold this? Because I think, Kim, you actually said this to us during a training one time about how, like, the difference between burnout versus moral injury. And so, like, in you sharing that, it makes sense where there might not have been as much tolerance for the other thing because of your experiences. That was more of a moral injury, it sounds like. That wasn't necessarily a burnout. So that makes sense where you were able to go to the other thing. So that's why I feel like maybe it's a tolerance level thing. Because even with our families, like, I'll tell all of our families, I walk in and I'm like, I'm huge on boundaries. But that's because I'm so self-aware that in my experience of being the parentified child, I'm very quick to manage and get inducted and try to, like, do the things for people. So I walk in just straight off the bat of, we're doing boundaries, you're going to do it, I will help you so much as you will help yourself. And so, like, that's my thing, but that's because I have that self-awareness and I know where my tolerance level ends and starts in that aspect.
Yeah, I think tolerance is a really great segue into what I was thinking, because I was thinking of, like, conditioning of so when I first got into IOP, I was maybe, like, less than 6 months into doing outpatient ever. Never had touched drug and alcohol work before. And here I am now doing 3 hours, 3 days a week with the most intense kind of, outside of inpatient, probably the most intense acuity in terms of client issues, right? And I did it for like a year, but I definitely think I realized at some point that, yes, as much as this grew me, as much as it was awesome for me, I was not ready yet. I didn't have the strength and the tolerance to do it long term, especially I was doing it with someone else, and that partner had to go on like a medical leave and such like that. So it kind of left me doing it on my own. And as much as I had help and support, like, I couldn't do it all. Right. And so I eventually just said, okay, I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to try, starting a little bit smaller. Like, I still do drug and alcohol work. I was doing 2 groups up until last week. They were just, much, less acuity, much easier to deal with, was not kind of conflicting with my own, like, at home stuff. And now I feel like, okay, I've been separated from IOP for about 6 months or so. Like, I think as time goes on, like, I could totally go back to it. I just need to build up that, like, strength and that tolerance and that consistency kind of thing.
I love that you said that because, like, yeah, like, it's being that it's about tolerance, you also have to give yourself grace and compassion. So if you're still figuring out where your tolerance is at, if you're feeling that discomfort, being able to say to yourself, it is okay, we'll figure it out. And we'll do what's necessary from there. We'll figure out where to go from there.
Yeah, yeah. Because I definitely, I had worked in IBHS. I had done some, work with families and kids, and it was great. But it's very different than outpatient. And so, having just gotten into outpatient and then jumping into a whole other thing of drug and alcohol work was a huge, like, it was too much to try to learn all at one time. And so now I've kind of taken a step back. I've kind of grown some more of the mental health stuff. I'm doing couples work now, which is really fun, and I've really enjoyed doing. But it's, like I need to take it in bites and build on top of it, create the foundation and build on top of it. Something we tell our clients all of the time and probably ignore ourselves to some extent.
Yeah. I think that's the hard part as therapists, though, is that we forget that we're also human. Like, yeah, we have all this knowledge and everything, but at the end of the day, we're still human. So, instead of giving ourselves the unholy trinity of emotions, as I like to call it, the blame, the shame, the guilt, instead of treating yourself with that, talk to yourself with kindness and love and compassion, because we're human and we're figuring it out.
And surround yourself with people who will.
Exactly.
Because I'm hearing in each of the themes that have been discussed, like you had a supervisor say, you got to do some things for you because I'm worried about you. You had a therapist say, what are you talking about? You're going to sacrifice yourself on the altar of IOP. It sounds like you had some difficult conversations with a former therapist as you were sort of creating your own identity. And it sounds like the two of you are consulting and often bouncing things off of each other. And I think that, to me, that's the central thread throughout everyone's experiences, which is that everyone put some scaffolding up around them. And I think we work in a system that historically lacks scaffolding. I think our field has gotten better, but I remember when I started in outpatient, dude, I showed up at 9:00. They're like, here's your office. Here's the paperwork you fill out with your client. Come find me after if you need anything. And that was it. That was my orientation. They're like, I assume you can read these things. See you later. And that's not right. I think our pendulum swung, and we just made some changes in outpatient. I think our pendulum swung too far the other direction. We're not going to let you see a client for the first 6 months independent. I don't think that's helpful either. I think there needed to be a middle ground. We need better scaffolding. We're in community mental health where, we could always do better if we had more money or more resources, and some of that's not forthcoming. So there's those very practical, realistic pieces as well, that if you could do IOP with a co-therapist in every session, that would be really cool. And yet, they don't pay us enough to pay.
Nope.
They don't pay us enough to pay one person well. We certainly wouldn't make enough money to pay 2 people well. But in an ideal world, wouldn't co-therapy and IOP be
so much
beautiful?
better?
Yes. So I think it's that practical, personal juxtaposition. And I'm mindful of our time, so I know that our time has I always like to end on a high note. I think it's important for us to go through the muck because a lot of it exists, but then I also like to recognize that there's some really good things here. And so I guess I want to end with a question that hopefully takes you to, actually I have 2 different questions. So I'm going to end with a hard question and then end on a high note.
Your face.
Because as I'm going, I'm like, shit, I really wanted to ask that because I thought it was a great question.
S tier animated trail.
Just stare deeply
Like
into
the office.
camera.
It's you gotta be kidding me.
And so my question is, how do you maintain that line? Because I think boundaries are really important. I think tolerance is important. But how do you personally navigate the line of caring deeply and authentically about the people we serve and not making their shit your shit or not making their problems your problems? Because ultimately, what's happening to our clients is very painful. And their stories and their narratives are really authentically hard to hear. And there's a level of professional distance that we need to maintain to be able to do this work. And that doesn't mean it never hurts. It's going to hurt. But I guess sort of back to that, what hurt is good hurt and what hurt is bad hurt? Or how do we walk that line between authentically caring and it's not mine?
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I know in family base, I am very, very mindful of the time that we have. And I'm very, like, and not only in the length of service, like the whole 8 months, but also in the length of the session, right? So a lot of the times when I have caregivers come to me and they're like, what do I do, Cece? I don't know how to handle this. What if this happens? What if that happens? I say, well, this is your house, right? Like, I leave. So I can offer suggestions to you and I can recommend things to you. You can follow through with them, or you can choose not to. But either way, I give you the egg and then I leave it there, and I will see you next time. So it kind of just depends on what you want to do with it. In the same way that, like, okay, we're in month 4 now. Like, this is around the time that we start really enacting some of the things that we've talked about. We're no longer like, I no longer need to get to know you. I know you well now. We're going to start doing the things that, we've talked about, because in the next 4 months, I'm going to start leaving. And so, what do you want that to look like? That's the one way I do it, is just to keep families very mindful of like, oh shit, she is going to leave in an hour. Okay. Like, how do I want this? Sometimes I'll ask, like, in the next so many minutes, what do you want this session to look like? What do you want to focus on? I'm not sure what
No,
OP looks like, or how you guys set that up.
I think
That's
in
how I do it.
general, though, like what you're saying is essentially the acceptance of knowing that at the end of the day, we can do our best as therapists, but something that my therapist and I kind of came up for with like a metaphor for was like we hold the lantern for our clients. We are not necessarily leading them down any particular path. We're not telling them what to do. We are just showing them, here are the options, and what you do with it, hey, that's up to you. We just are here to care and accept you for where you are, where you're at. And I think that being able to let go of it and not feel so like dependent on their choices has been huge in terms of keeping that protection that we're talking about.
And I feel like that's where the scaffolding again comes in. It's so important because like something completely terrible and off the wall could happen. And I mean, like in family based, you're blessed to have a teammate. So you can hop in the car and just look at each other and be like, what the fuck just happened? And you can laugh about it. You can talk about, I mean, that sounds awful to laugh about it, but
Yeah, I know what you mean.
you can.
I think there are times where the absurdity of life leaves us no choice but to laugh.
Oh, you have to laugh.
They're just so out of pocket sometimes. It's not even the clients. It's just life in general just presents it. So that's why so many comedians have made entire careers around just being like, have you seen the subway? It's crazy, right? Like, and they just like, they're observing things, right? Like that's the whole thing. Like the life. Yeah. Like I was going to say, like a lot of seasons.
Of life.
So yeah, that totally makes sense to laugh about it. We're not making fun of people. We're not laughing at anybody's expense. We're just laughing at like the universe creates wild situations sometimes.
And then you have to end on a good note too. Like, quick story is one of the hardest cases that I've had was with my another former partner, Carla. And that session was a shit show for a lot of various reasons, because she got activated because the caregiver made it sound like I didn't understand him or I wasn't doing enough for him. And she was like, that is not the story at all. Like, Cece has done so much more for you. I was like, girl, you do not have to defend me. Trust me. If I look back at this session and look back at our time together and I see all of the good work that I've done and all the ways that I've tried to help this family, I'm going to sleep astronomically well tonight with the fan on my side with a weighted blanket. Like, you do not have to defend me. And that's kind of what we have to do in our work too. Like, our sessions are going to be shit shows, but if I went in there and I know I did the damn thing, like I just did the damn thing, and we're going to laugh about it and talk about it. We're going to, reflect and take it off and then go back to the next session.
I completely agree. It's all about what's within our control.
Mm-hmm.
And like, we can only control our behavior. We can't control our emotions. So where they go. Mm-hmm. But like, we can control how we choose to show up for that family and what we give to them versus what we take. And so if we take some emotions with us, okay, that's where like, lean on the village. because there's other people that are going to feel it with you. Like, I can't tell you the amount of sessions where I've felt something, and having Ashley right there beside me made me feel comfortable, which then provided something for the family.
Regulation.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Fancy.
Great
Mike
use of our
Lord.
team. But no, because it's like, in those situations, sometimes whenever it's like really heavy in session, because there's just so much going on, you can't help but feel it. And you can't help but want to help. So at least for me, that's where I go into, I can't fix this for them. I choose to be part of the solution, but I genuinely can't fix this for them. The most I can do is hold their hand through it and like feel the hurt with them. That's the most I can do. But my hurt also looks different from their hurt, the same way their hurt looks different from my hurt. So in having someone who the hurt is going to feel the same, and knowing that there's going to be a space for us later on where we can talk about that hurt, helps me stay regulated for the family so that I'm giving them what I'm going to get.
Oh yeah. Like I was saying before we recorded, top 3 favorite thing to do: talk shit, instigate. There was something else I don't remember, but I can't wait.
Curse.
Sometimes curse.
Curse.
Yes, thank you. Sometimes
Because I was like, me too, girl.
sometimes I can't wait to get in my car and be like, this fucking session was wild, and like texting about it or ranting about it, yelling about it. Not necessarily like telling my families like all the details, but just being like, you would like, if you could see my job, you would fall over. Like, I can't wait to do some of that stuff.
But I think part of that process, and for me, I think this is where my own experiences as the client come full circle, is that I know that there are times in therapy, and I think early career clinicians sometimes get this wrong, especially if they don't have their own therapeutic history. I think everyone expects therapy to be more like paced, like you take one step in this session, one step in that session, one step in that session. And I think as a therapist who's done this work for a while and as a client who's had several experiences with it, it's rarely, at least in my experiences, that measured or that well paced. I think it's like 1 step, 0 steps, 0 steps, 0 steps, 30 steps, 3 steps back. But it's not, I think it's not always those individual sessions that's where the power is. And so I think sometimes it's also tolerating it as a therapist, tolerating the discomfort in the moment, leaving the sessions being like, holy shit, what happened? Reflecting on it, letting the family reflect on it, letting the client reflect on it, coming back the next week and being like, what was that, everyone? And us learning from that experience together and discovering together. And I think, especially early in my career, I was like, no, it needs to be done and dusted every session. At the end of every session, we must anchor that session. We must have it all in a nice, neat, clean little bow. And as evidenced by the fact that I was often going 5, 10, 20, 30 minutes over sessions and not ending on time because I needed it in my head to be neater and more closed than like... Many of these families are used to chaos. They're used to dysregulation. Many of these clients are used to feeling triggered and upset and lost and scared. And so they have a much greater tolerance for it than maybe I do. And so it's about, I don't know, for me, letting the process unfold and trusting the process as it does and not trying to overcompensate or help it along the way. And I think only that comes with time and reflection.
And again, helps as a client too, because when I started therapy, my therapist taught me how to cry. Like she was like, she's like, how often do you do that? And I was like, I don't know, like maybe 4 times a year. And she was like, girl, I cry every day. What are you talking about? I was like, you're doing too much. Why are you crying every day? Like every day? Like, girl, your body doesn't even have that much water. Like, what do you mean? And then when she taught me how to cry, then she kept bringing it up every session. She'd be like, remember that session I taught you how to cry? I'd be like, girl, chill. Like, we can move past this. But she had to kind of let me have to simmer in that too, because I had this really cathartic session where I cried. Oh, and it was an ugly cry. But I cried, got it out, sat in how that felt. And then it like helped me be more in tune with my emotions because I was just used to just going. And so like you were saying, it helps on both ends too.
Cece, I always say that it makes my day when I make someone cry.
Oh my gosh, like I tell my clients I get paid extra when they cry. But I'm a thug, so I'm not gonna.
Like you're in your feels. Let it like sit in it.
Yep. tissues are complimentary as part of your therapeutic
Yep.
service, so you can take as many as you want.
Oh my gosh, I was so offended when she pushed that box closer to me. She was like, you know, like just in case you want them. I was like, I promise I will stop coming back tomorrow if you keep this up. And then I cried, and then we like got through it, so it was good.
All right. To bring us home, what would y'all say came from your own either experience of being a therapist or your experience on the other side of the couch, your experience of being a recipient of treatment services of any modality, that inspires and motivates you today?
I think for me, going back to what I was saying earlier about how, like, even with the client that gets discharged due to noncompliance, every session's a crisis, every session's something, and you feel like no progress is being made. Progress was made because you saw them and you heard them and you gave them something. So I think that's something that I carry as a family-based therapist, is that I'm making a difference by being there, and that's more than enough. I probably won't know what that difference looks like in the end, but knowing that my intent is to make a difference is enough for me.
No, I love that idea. We're planting seeds. As therapists, I think oftentimes we're too impatient to see what grows.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't get to. That's not part of our job sometimes.
And every experience shapes you in some way, shape, or form. So, like, every experience I've had as a client has shaped me in various compartments of my life. Every experience as a therapist has shaped me in various compartments of my life. So sometimes I like to remind people that life is a lesson. It's one long, long lesson, but you get stuff out of it. So that's what I take from it.
If you choose to.
Yeah. There is a responsibility there too. You're right.
Yeah, I think for me, a big part of it has been that acceptance, understanding that at the end of the day, I have to let it go and it's okay. Like, I don't have to do it all in that moment. But I think, if, at least for me, one of the most profound things now, having been in my own therapy, is when I have the client who comes to me and they go, how do you sit here all day and listen to people tell you horrible things? I can be like, I go to therapy. And then, I mean, that does then present the question of, like, does my therapist go to therapy? Is it just a Russian nesting dolls of is there like an almighty therapist that's like over the I don't know, but like, it's cool to be able to say, no, like, you're in the right place. And I know that because now I'm in the right place too.
Oh, that was a bar. I need to get that on a t-shirt. Yeah.
I'll put it on the
You
list.
can't drop these, but
Yeah.
I think for me, it's from what I've learned going through my own therapy throughout the years and then the experience with family base, I think it's like taught me new ways to try things or different ways to do things where, I don't know, for me, it's like if I've experienced, I'm more comfortable giving that to. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
Like, if I know this works, like if it worked for me, hell yeah, I'm going to try it with you. Like, I'm going to be comfortable and confident in doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like, I don't know.
it's like
No, I think I've definitely learned. I think I've definitely learned more in the 2 years that I've been in therapy. I think I might have learned more than the entire time I was in school. Because it's just you are experiencing it, and it's like, not only are you able to then take it and apply it yourself, but then you're also experiencing it for yourself and how it feels on the other end of things. And I think that's huge to know how to build that empathy with the client. You now know what it feels like to some extent, what they're experiencing.
I think it also gives you a greater sense of like capacity and tolerance for your client's therapy interfering behaviors.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think I remember working with, 1,000 times over my course of being a supervisor for individuals working with problematic sexual behavior, family secrets, or drug and alcohol. Like, they'll come in, they think I'm stupid, and that's evidenced by the fact that they're lying to me. And it's like, man, I lied to all of my therapists, every single one. Every single one.
It's like a rite of passage. Like,
It
you have to
is.
start therapy with a lie.
I think so. And I operate from the assumption that all of my clients lie to me. And I think it's a compliment. If I don't care about you enough to lie to you and then try to keep track of that lie, I don't care about you at all. I mean, I don't care at all about your opinion or your perspective so that's how I've reframed it for me. Like when a client is dishonest with me. And I think if any of us are honest with ourselves, we can think about that time where our therapist turned to us and like, well, what does that remind you of? And like inside, we know exactly what it reminds us of. And outside, we're like, no clue.
When the call is coming from
Not
inside
a
the house
single
and you
idea.
press decline.
Oh, yes.
Like,
Yes.
yep.
No, not answering it. Or I don't know, from start to finish. So I think that there's different places where I've watched clinicians struggle with empathy for those places or make up stories about that client's behavior that I don't know necessarily reflects that client's true intentions. And I think if they'd been in their own therapy and lied to their therapist, it would land differently. Is all I'm saying. It would land differently. And so I think at the end, my take home message for today's pod is that if you want to be a therapist, or if you are a therapist and haven't done your own therapy yet, I think you should. I think pound for pound, there is no book, treatment course, or training modality that will serve you better than being in your own therapy for a season or for multiple seasons. That wasn't my takeaway, though. I think my takeaway, y'all just inspired
Wait a minute,
me
you
to-
just said that was your takeaway.
I know.
She lied to us.
She's like, I got another takeaway.
What did you just say about lying, though?
Yeah. She cares about us. That's, I think, what I just took
Why I
away.
lie enough to
I
you.
felt the love so hard just now.
No, my takeaway is including the family system. My takeaway is
important,
that.
yeah.
I think that to me, whether you're an outpatient therapist doing individual work or whether you're a family therapist, I feel like I made a lot of gains in my own therapy individually, and I got a lot out of that. But I didn't get to that next level until I did couples therapy with my husband and like really did the thing versus quitting after I didn't like his ringtone. I think it was really showing up and doing the thing and having somebody I loved and cared about and trusted in the psychotherapy room with me. That's when I hit that sort of next level of therapeutic gains that I don't think I would have gotten if I had stayed in individual therapy forever.
That's the power of group too, right?
It's the power of group as well. I love group therapy. It's hard to get into.
I'm trying to talk my therapist into running a group for therapists, like a mental health group where like the focus is building each other, because I think that would be huge. But yeah, no, I think the idea of being in couples, in group, whatever, like it's only going to further expand your knowledge and your understanding of the field.
And community.
Yeah, huge.
And universality. Like that, it's not just me that has this struggle. We all do. Phew. All right. Well, y'all, we had I think a great conversation here today. We do have a couple upcoming conversations. So the next 2 episodes of the How Do We Happy Hour is actually going to be jumping back to season 2, demystifying the level of care. So we have one upcoming podcast looking all at drug and alcohol treatment, what it looks like, what to expect, what works, what doesn't in that modality. We have another one coming up looking at forensic treatment and different ways in which we approach that and how we can be, what to expect and how we can be more effective. Then after that, we will be jumping back into the last 2 episodes of this particular season of the How to Be Happy Hour. We're going to look at relationships, specific the cousin relationship and how our cousins play out in our development and take us closer to or further. Cousins are big for me, so excited for that topic.
They're cousins.
You have 0 cousins?
Yeah, can't relate.
What's that
I don't
like?
even know all my cousins. I have so many.
I have a lot of cousins.
Me too.
Interesting.
Cousins.
So you're not invited to the cousins.
Yeah, it's okay.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Denied.
All right, I'll be right there with you. I barely
You've got
yeah.
no cousins. Maybe we could do a pro versus anti-cousin debate.
It'd be so fun. Yeah.
Anti-cousin is
Anti-cousin.
wild.
I hate cousins. No.
Get them out of here.
No, not that. Cousins are great. So we're going to talk about cousins. We're also going to talk about grandparents. and the role of grandparents, or maybe the impediment grandparents serve. I think grandparents can be a greatest gift, can be a challenge. I think it can be hard to move into our grandparent identity. I'm not there yet, but I am painfully aware that I'm raising two boys and will someday be the mother-in-law, which also means I'll be the grandma-in-law if the universe smiles upon me. So looking forward to unpacking those two different things. If y'all have any questions for the How to Be Happy Hour, again, it's Kim at How to Be Happy Hour. That's where we send those questions. But otherwise, I want to pause for a moment and appreciate y'all for showing up here today. I know talking about our experiences as a client is not maybe naturally conducive to what we expect when we show up at work every day. So I want to thank y'all for doing it for me here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having us.